Persuasion. Influence without pressure. Opening frame. Why most persuasion fails. Most people think persuasion is about stronger arguments, better words, smarter tactics. But persuasion rarely fails at the level of logic. It fails at the level of safety. People do not resist ideas, they resist states. This is where Russell H. Conwell was ahead of his time in increasing personal efficiency. He understood something most modern advice ignores. You cannot persuade a nervous system that feels threatened. Persuasion begins before words. Persuasion starts before the first sentence. It starts with tone, posture, pacing, emotional temperature. The listener's nervous system asks one question: am I safe here? If the answer is no, the mind closes, even if the idea is brilliant. Pressure creates resistance, not agreement. Compliance is not persuasion. Compliance is fragile. The moment pressure disappears, the agreement dissolves. True persuasion creates internal movement, not external surrender. Why logic alone never converts. Logic organizes ideas, it does not organize emotions. Unresolved emotion blocks acceptance. This is why facts bounce off people who feel disrespected, rushed, threatened. Persuasion must pass through emotion to reach reason. The nervous system as the gatekeeper. The nervous system decides what feels credible, what feels dangerous, what deserves attention. If the system is calm, curiosity opens, nuance is tolerated. If the system is tense, simplification increases, defensiveness appears. You are persuading biology first. Reflection pause. Safety check. Ask quietly, when I speak to influence, do people relax or brace? Why being right often fails. Being right can feel like attack. Correcting someone publicly threatens identity, triggers defense, hardens position. Conwell warned that persuasion fails when ego enters the room. Truth delivered without safety feels like force. The difference between influence and manipulation. Manipulation hides intention. Influence clarifies it. Manipulation seeks advantage. Influence seeks alignment. The listener feels the difference immediately. Hidden agendas destabilize trust. Clear intention stabilizes it. Persuasion as an invitation, not an invasion. Effective persuasion feels like an opening, a question, a shared exploration, not a corner, not a trap, not a demand. People move toward what respects their autonomy. Reflection pause. Autonomy awareness. Invite the listener. When I try to persuade, do I leave room for choice, or do I secretly need agreement? Because the deepest influence doesn't push people forward, it removes what holds them back. Why calm is the strongest persuasive tool. Calm disarms resistance. A calm speaker signals there is no emergency. Emergency thinking shuts down openness. Calm restores agency. Agency allows reconsideration. The hidden cost of winning arguments. Winning arguments can cost relationships. It creates distance, resentment, silent opposition. Conwell valued long-term influence over short-term victory. Persuasion that damages trust destroys future access. The first law of true persuasion. People are persuaded when they feel understood, not corrected. Understanding precedes influence, always. Transition to segment 2. In the next segment, we will explore how identity blocks persuasion, why people defend ideas that hurt them, speaking without triggering ego, the psychology of agreement. Because the deepest influence doesn't push people forward, it removes what holds them back.
Influence without pressure. Why identity blocks persuasion. People don't defend ideas. They defend who they believe they are. An idea tied to identity is no longer information. It becomes self-protection. This is why facts fail. Facts challenge ideas. Persuasion challenges identity. And identity fights back. When changing an opinion feels like losing the self. To change a belief can feel like admitting weakness, betraying the past, losing status, losing belonging. So the nervous system resists, not because the idea is wrong, but because the cost feels too high. Understanding this changes everything. Reflection pause. Identity awareness. Invite the listener. Think of a belief you once held strongly, that you later changed. What did you fear losing? Why people defend ideas that harm them. Harmful beliefs often provide certainty, belonging, structure. Removing them creates a vacuum. People cling to pain when pain feels familiar and organizing. Persuasion fails when it removes structure without offering replacement. The role of dignity in influence. People change when their dignity is preserved. Public humiliation hardens identity. Private respect softens it. This is why Conwell emphasized character over cleverness. Influence without dignity is domination. How to speak without triggering ego. Ego is triggered by superiority, certainty, correction. It is soothed by curiosity, humility, shared exploration. Ask more than you assert. Invite more than you instruct. Reflection pause. Ego temperature check. Ask quietly. When I persuade, do I sound like a teacher or a companion? Agreement is a process, not a moment. True agreement unfolds slowly. It begins as curiosity, doubt, internal questioning, then moves to reconsideration, integration. Forcing speed disrupts the process. Patience is persuasive. Why listening is the highest form of influence. Listening creates psychological safety. Safety allows exploration. Exploration allows movement. People often persuade themselves when they feel fully heard. Silence after listening is more influential than arguments. Reframing without confrontation. Effective persuaders don't negate beliefs, they reframe them. They say, what if this also means? Another way to see this is, reframing preserves identity while opening new meaning. Reflection pause, reframing practice. Invite the listener. Think of a disagreement. How could you reframe it without saying you're wrong? Why soft language can carry hard truth. Soft delivery lowers defenses. Hard truth then passes through. Harsh delivery blocks even gentle ideas. Tone determines access. The second law of true persuasion. People move when their dignity is intact, their identity is respected, their autonomy is preserved. Persuasion that ignores these creates resistance disguised as agreement. Transition to segment 3. In the next segment, we will explore the psychology of agreement, how to lead people to their own conclusions, persuasion through questions, and why indirect influence lasts longer. Because the strongest influence does not replace someone's mind, it guides it back to itself. Influence without pressure. The psychology of agreement.
Agreement rarely arrives as yes. It arrives as, that makes sense, or I never thought of it that way, or maybe. These are not weak responses. They are openings. Persuasion begins where certainty loosens. Why people trust their own conclusions more. Ideas imposed feel foreign. Ideas discovered feel personal. When people reach conclusions themselves, resistance drops, ownership rises, integration deepens. This is why direct persuasion often fails. Indirect guidance succeeds. Reflection pause, self-discovery. Invite the listener. Think of a belief you truly own. Did someone force it on you, or did you arrive there? Questions as instruments of influence. Statements close loops. Questions open them. A good question slows thinking, redirects attention, invites reflection. Questions bypass defense because they do not threaten identity. Leading without leading. Effective persuaders rarely lead. They walk beside. They say, "What do you think happens if?" Or, "How does that fit with?" Or, "What might be the cost of?" The listener moves internally while feeling in control. Why indirect influence lasts longer. Direct influence creates compliance. Indirect influence creates transformation. Compliance fades when pressure ends. Transformation persists because it is internal. This is why Russell H. Conwell emphasized efficiency of process, not force, in Increasing Personal Efficiency. Reflection pause, influence style check. Ask quietly, do I try to change people quickly or help them see clearly? The power of partial agreement. Total opposition hardens positions. Partial agreement softens them. Saying, "You're right about this part," creates a bridge. From that bridge, new ideas can cross. Why people resist conclusions, not journeys. Conclusions feel final. Journeys feel safe. When you present conclusions, defenses rise. When you invite exploration, curiosity opens. Let people walk the path. They will arrive without being pushed. Silence after the question. Asking a question is not enough. You must tolerate the silence after it. Silence allows internal processing, emotional settling. Interrupting silence steals insight. Patience is persuasive. Reflection pause, silence tolerance. Invite the listener. When silence appears, do I rush to fill it, or do I allow thinking to happen? Agreement as internal reorganization. Real agreement feels like clarity, relief, and alignment. Not excitement, not pressure, not urgency. If agreement feels tense, it is unstable. The third law of true persuasion. People are persuaded when they feel free to disagree. Freedom disarms resistance. Resistance dissolves when it is no longer needed. Transition to final segment of Part 5. In the final segment, we will integrate persuasion as long-term influence, when not to persuade at all, the ethics of changing minds, and leaving people stronger, not dependent. Because the highest persuasion does not take control, it returns it. Persuasion as long-term influence. Short-term persuasion changes behavior. Long-term persuasion changes orientation. Behavior reverts when pressure ends. Orientation endures because it reorganizes values. If influence does not outlast your presence, it was never persuasion. When not to persuade at all. Not every moment is a moment for influence. Do not persuade when emotions are high. Identity is threatened. Trust is fragile. In these moments, regulation matters more than reasoning. Sometimes the most persuasive act is restraint. Reflection pause. Discernment check. Invite the listener. Right now, is this a moment for influence or for safety? The ethics of changing minds. Changing a mind is intimate. It reshapes self-image, social belonging, future choices. Ethical persuasion asks, will this leave them stronger? If influence creates dependence, it is manipulation. If it creates clarity, it is service. Leaving people stronger, not dependent. True influence increases autonomy. After the conversation, the other person should feel more capable, more oriented, more self-directed. If they need you to think for them, persuasion failed its ethical test. The quiet power of non-attachment. Needing agreement creates pressure. Non-attachment creates space. When you are willing to be misunderstood, defensiveness dissolves, sincerity increases. People trust those who do not need to win. Reflection pause. Attachment awareness. Ask quietly, am I attached to being right or committed to clarity? Persuasion as environmental design. You don't push people into change, you design conditions where change becomes natural. Conditions like calm pace, respectful tone, open questions, preserved dignity. In the right environment, minds reorganize themselves. Why moral grounding amplifies influence. Influence without grounding erodes trust over time. Grounded influence compounds. This is why Russell H. Conwell treated persuasion as an extension of character in increasing personal efficiency. Who you are speaks louder than what you argue. Persuasion as mutual clarification. The highest persuasion changes both sides. You leave the conversation clearer, so do they. No conquest, no submission, only alignment. Practical integration, the persuasion discipline. For the next week, practice. Ask one genuine question before stating your view. Pause fully after the answer. Offer one reframe instead of one correction. End conversations without forcing closure. Notice, resistance softens, dialogue deepens, influence lengthens.
Before you persuade, regulate. Before you convince, listen. Before you seek agreement, protect dignity. Because the deepest influence does not change what people think. It changes how safe they feel while thinking. Discipline and self-reliance. Order that creates freedom. Most people associate discipline with force, punishment, rigidity. This misunderstanding destroys consistency. True discipline is not pressure. It is self-trust made visible. When discipline exists, effort decreases. Why motivation is unreliable. Motivation is emotional. Emotions fluctuate. Building a life on motivation is building on weather. Self-reliance requires systems, not moods. Discipline replaces volatility with structure. Reflection pause. Invite the listener.
Notice how often you wait to feel ready. What would change if readiness was irrelevant? Self-reliance begins with predictability. You trust people who are predictable. You distrust chaos. Your nervous system is no different. When you wake at random times, work inconsistently, decide daily who you'll be, your system stays alert. Discipline calms it. Order as psychological safety. Order reduces cognitive load. When routines exist, decisions decrease. Energy consolidates. Focus deepens. Discipline is not restriction. It is relief. The difference between willpower and structure. Willpower is expensive. Structure is efficient. Willpower fights resistance. Structure removes it. People burn out trying to force consistency instead of designing it. Reflection pause, resistance audit. Ask quietly, where do I rely on force instead of design? Why self-reliance requires boundaries. Without boundaries, energy leaks, attention scatters, commitments erode. Self-reliance means I decide what enters my time. This is not selfishness, it is survival. Discipline as identity, not task. Doing disciplined actions is different from being disciplined. Identity creates behavior automatically. Behavior without identity requires effort. This is why habits stick when they align with self-image. The quiet power of consistency. Consistency compounds invisibly. Small actions repeated calmly outperform dramatic effort. This is the efficiency Russell H. Conwell pointed to in Increasing Personal Efficiency. No urgency, no display, just alignment over time. Reflection pause, identity check. Invite the listener. Who am I becoming through what I repeat? Why discipline feels heavy at first. Early discipline feels heavy because chaos resists order. But once order stabilizes, friction drops, effort lightens, momentum carries you. Discipline is front-loaded discomfort for long-term ease. Self-reliance is emotional, not just practical. Relying on yourself means tolerating boredom, sitting with discomfort, acting without applause. This emotional strength is what most people lack. The first law of self-reliance. Do not promise what you cannot repeat. Integrity with self is the foundation of discipline. Break promises to others, trust weakens. Break promises to yourself, self-reliance collapses. Transition to segment 2. In the next segment, we will explore why discipline fails without self-respect, the psychology of follow-through, building routines that don't exhaust you, discipline without self-punishment. Because true discipline does not make life smaller, it makes you dependable. Discipline and self-reliance. Order that creates freedom. Why discipline fails without self-respect. People don't fail at discipline because they're lazy. They fail because they don't trust themselves. Self-disrespect creates sabotage. Why maintain a promise to someone you don't value? Discipline begins when self-respect is restored. The psychology of follow-through. Follow-through is not about strength. It is about credibility. Each completed promise says, I can be relied on. Each broken promise says, my word is unstable. The nervous system keeps score. Over time, it stops cooperating. Reflection pause. Credibility check. Invite the listener. When I promise myself something, do I believe it, or do I already expect failure? Why overambition breaks discipline. Excessive goals create pressure, avoidance, and collapse. Sustainable discipline prefers modest commitments, repeatable actions, and low friction. Consistency beats intensity, always. Discipline without self-punishment. Many people use discipline as punishment. They say, I must suffer to improve. This creates rebellion. Healthy discipline says, I choose structure to protect myself. Protection sustains. Punishment fractures. The role of self-compassion in consistency. Self-compassion is not softness, it is accuracy. It recognizes limits without collapsing. Compassion allows recovery. Recovery sustains discipline longer than guilt ever will. Reflection pause. Inner tone awareness. Ask quietly, when I fail, how do I speak to myself? Would I continue if spoken to that way?
Designing routines that don't exhaust you. Exhausting routines fail. Effective routines start small, fit natural energy cycles, reduce decisions. The goal is not heroism. The goal is repeatability. Why environment outperforms willpower. People overestimate self-control and underestimate environment. Change the environment and behavior shifts naturally. Resistance drops. Self-reliance includes engineering surroundings that support you. Discipline as emotional regulation. When emotions spike, discipline stabilizes. Routine anchors you when motivation disappears. This is why disciplined people appear calm under pressure. Structure absorbs shock. Reflection pause. Stability check. Invite the listener. When life destabilizes, what holds me steady? The quiet confidence of reliability. Reliable people move differently. They speak less, promise carefully, and act consistently. This creates inner confidence that does not require validation. Self-reliance feels like calm certainty. The second law of self-reliance. Design your life so your future self does not have to fight you. Ease is not weakness. Ease is intelligence. Transition to segment 3. In the next segment, we will explore discipline during emotional lows, how boredom destroys progress, building resilience without force, and trusting yourself under pressure. Because real discipline is not about control, it is about care applied consistently.
Discipline as self-leadership. Discipline is not obedience. It is self-leadership. You are not following rules imposed from outside. You are honoring agreements made inside. Leadership begins when excuses stop negotiating. Independence from external validation. External validation is unstable. Applause fades. Approval shifts. Attention moves on. Self-reliance means I act whether I am seen or not. This independence stabilizes effort. Reflection pause. Validation audit. Invite the listener. If no one noticed my progress, would I still continue? Discipline during uncertainty. Uncertainty tempts collapse. Without clear outcomes, effort feels pointless. Doubt multiplies. Discipline holds direction when certainty is unavailable. You don't need clarity, you need continuity. Building a life that holds under stress. A disciplined life absorbs impact. When stress arrives, routines remain, decisions simplify, priorities stay visible. This is resilience by design, not toughness. Why freedom requires structure. Total freedom overwhelms. Structure narrows choice so energy can flow. This is the paradox. The more order you create, the freer you feel. Reflection pause. Freedom reframe. Ask quietly. Where has structure actually made my life easier? Self-reliance as emotional maturity. Relying on yourself means regulating disappointment, holding discomfort, acting without reassurance. This maturity replaces anxiety with steadiness. The ethical dimension of discipline. Discipline shapes character. Character shapes influence. A disciplined person becomes predictable, reliable, trustworthy, not impressive, dependable. When discipline becomes identity, eventually discipline stops feeling like effort. It becomes how you move, how you decide, how you recover. Identity carries what willpower once struggled to hold. Practical integration, the self-reliance practice. For the next 14 days, wake at the same time. Keep one small daily promise. Remove one decision from your day. Act once daily without waiting for motivation. Observe. Anxiety decreases. Trust in self grows. Effort lightens. Closing passage. Seal the insight. You do not need more force. You need fewer broken promises. You do not need more motivation. You need fewer negotiations with yourself. Because freedom is not the absence of structure. It is the ability to rely on yourself.
Work, focus, and inner order. Productivity as psychological stability. Opening frame. Why most work feels heavy. Most people think work is exhausting because it is hard. In reality, work becomes heavy when the mind is disordered. Scattered attention costs more energy than effort itself. Order precedes efficiency. Focus is not intensity. Focus is not force. It is exclusion. To focus means choosing one thing and refusing 10 others. This refusal creates clarity. Clarity conserves energy. Reflection pause. Invite the listener. Right now, how many unfinished tasks are quietly pulling at your attention? Why multitasking fractures the mind? Multitasking feels productive. It is not. It fragments attention, memory, and emotional regulation. Switching tasks repeatedly keeps the nervous system alert. Alert systems tire quickly. Inner order before outer output. Clean tools don't matter if the mind is cluttered. Inner order includes clear priorities, emotional regulation, and defined boundaries. Work reflects internal structure. Chaos inside produces friction outside. The hidden cost of constant stimulation. Notifications train distraction. Stimulation trains impatience. Impatience destroys deep work. Depth requires tolerance for silence. Silence restores focus. Reflection pause. Stimulation audit. Ask quietly, What noise am I allowing that fragments my attention? Why focus is an emotional skill. People lose focus not because they are distracted, but because they avoid discomfort. Deep work brings boredom, doubt, and self-confrontation. Distraction is emotional escape. Work as regulation, not escape. Work can stabilize the mind, or it can numb it. Regulating work has clear start and end, respects energy cycles, and allows recovery. Escapist work never finishes. The role of simplicity in productivity. Complex systems collapse under stress. Simple systems survive. This is the efficiency emphasized by Russell H. Conwell in Increasing Personal Efficiency. Reduce friction, clarify purpose, repeat calmly. Reflection pause, system check. Invite the listener. Where has complexity replaced clarity in my work? Attention as a finite resource. Attention does not expand, it depletes. Guarding attention is an act of self-respect. Unprotected attention is quietly stolen. Why starting matters more than finishing. Starting sets the tone. A clear start reduces resistance, creates momentum. Finishing benefits from structure established at the beginning. Discipline begins at initiation. The first law of focused work. Do not ask, how much can I do? Ask, what deserves my attention now? Focus is priority made visible. Transition to segment 2. In the next segment, we will explore deep work without burnout, structuring time to protect focus, working with energy not against, and ending work with no mental residue. Because productive people don't work harder, they work cleaner.
Work, focus, and inner order. Productivity as psychological stability. Focus under emotional pressure. Pressure narrows attention. It pushes the mind toward urgency, shortcuts, and reactive decisions. Focused people do the opposite. They slow down under pressure. Slowing restores choice. Choice restores order. Why resistance appears before depth. Resistance is not a signal to stop. It is a signal you are approaching depth. The mind resists uncertainty, effort without immediate reward, and self-confrontation. Passing resistance is what separates surface work from meaningful work. Reflection pause. Resistance reframe. Invite the listener. What if resistance is not the enemy, but the doorway? Working calmly through difficulty. Calm does not remove difficulty. It contains it. A calm worker breaks tasks down, stays present, and avoids catastrophic thinking. Calm turns complexity into sequence. Attention during uncertainty. Uncertainty scatters focus. The mind seeks reassurance instead of progress. The solution is not certainty. It is next clear action. Clarity of the next step outperforms clarity of the whole plan. Inner order as professional advantage. Skills matter, but inner order determines how skills are used. People with inner order respond instead of react, adapt without panic, and maintain quality under pressure. This reliability compounds over time. It becomes reputation. Reflection pause. Reliability check. Ask quietly, when things become unclear, do I fragment or do I simplify? Why emotional regulation sustains focus. Unregulated emotion hijacks attention. Regulated emotion supports it. This does not mean suppression. It means noticing emotion, naming it, and continuing anyway. This prevents distraction without denial. focus as a form of respect. When you focus deeply, you respect the task, you respect the outcome, and you respect yourself. Scattered work signals indifference. Attention communicates value. The trap of urgency culture. Urgency feels productive. It is often avoidance. Urgency avoids planning, depth, and responsibility. Focused work tolerates slowness. Slowness allows quality. Reflection pause. Urgency audit. Invite the listener. Where am I rushing instead of organizing? Inner order creates external trust. Disordered minds create unpredictable work. Ordered minds create confidence. This is why Russell H. Conwell emphasized internal efficiency in increasing personal efficiency. Efficiency begins inside. Output follows structure. The third law of focused work. When pressure increases, reduce scope, increase presence, maintain continuity. This preserves quality when others collapse. Transition to final segment of Part 7. In the final segment, we will integrate work as a stabilizing force, focus without obsession, and inner order as a life system, ending workdays with peace. Because the highest productivity does not exhaust the mind, it organizes it.
Work, focus, and inner order. Productivity as psychological stability. Work can agitate the mind, or it can stabilize it. When work is defined, bounded, and intentional, it becomes an anchor. Disordered work destabilizes. Ordered work calms. Focus without obsession. Obsession tightens the mind. Focus relaxes it. Obsession says, I must finish at any cost. Focus says, I will return tomorrow. Sustainable productivity respects limits. Reflection pause. Effort quality. Invite the listener. Does my work tighten me or settle me? Inner order as a life system. Inner order does not end with work. It extends to how you decide, how you rest, how you recover. Work becomes practice for emotional regulation. Life reflects what work trains. Ending workdays with peace. How you end work determines how you rest. Clear endings signal safety, release attention, restore presence. Never end work in chaos. Closure is a discipline. Why focus is a moral choice. Attention is life. Where you place it shapes who you become. Scattered attention scatters character. Focused attention builds integrity. Reflection pause. Attention alignment. Ask quietly, is my attention aligned with the life I want? Work as a container for meaning. Meaning requires continuity. Random effort fragments purpose. Consistent work organizes values. This is the deeper efficiency taught by Russell H. Conwell in Increasing Personal Efficiency. Order is not productivity's enemy. It is its foundation. Inner order during rest. Rest without order becomes distraction. Ordered rest restores energy, deepens clarity, prepares attention. Rest is part of the system. When focus becomes identity. Eventually, focus stops being effort. It becomes how you listen, how you speak, how you choose. Identity carries what discipline once enforced. Practical integration, the focused life practice. For the next week, choose one primary task per day. Define a clear start and end time. Protect one uninterrupted block. End work with written closure. Notice, mental noise decreases, quality increases, rest deepens. Closing passage. seal the insight. You do not need to do more. You need to scatter less. You do not need more hours. You need cleaner attention. Because true productivity is not measured by output. It is measured by inner order preserved. Work, focus, and inner order. Productivity as psychological stability. Deep work without burnout. Burnout is not caused by effort. It is caused by uncontained effort. When work has no edges, it leaks into rest. It invades identity. It never completes. Deep work requires clear boundaries. Structuring time to protect focus. Time is not neutral. Unstructured time invites intrusion. Structure protects attention by defining start, defining end, and defining intention. Focus survives inside containers. Reflection pause, boundary awareness. Invite the listener. When does my work actually end? Or does it quietly follow me everywhere? Working with energy, not against it. Energy follows rhythm. Ignoring rhythm creates resistance. Effective workers match demanding tasks to peak energy. Reserve low energy for simple work. This alignment reduces friction. Why rest is a productivity skill. Rest is not absence of work. It is preparation. Without rest, focus fragments, patience shortens, mistakes multiply. Rest repairs attention. Ending work without mental residue. Unfinished loops drain energy. Closing rituals matter. Before ending work, note what's next, mark completion, and disengage deliberately. This frees the mind. Reflection pause, closure check. Ask quietly, do I finish my work or do I just stop? The myth of constant output. Constant output is unsustainable. Periods of silence are necessary for integration. Quiet phases are not failure, they are incubation. Focus as a relationship with yourself. When you respect your attention, you respect yourself. Breaking focus repeatedly teaches the mind to distrust you. Protecting focus builds inner coherence. The role of ritual in work. Ritual signals the nervous system. Starting rituals prepare, ending rituals release. Ritual reduces decision fatigue. Reflection pause, ritual awareness. Invite the listener. How do I signal to myself that it is time to begin and time to stop? The cost of over-optimization. Too much optimization becomes obsession. Simplicity beats perfection. Systems exist to serve work, not replace it. The second law of focused work. Protect your attention as you would protect your health. Once depleted, it takes time to restore. Transition to segment 3. In the next segment, we will explore focus under emotional pressure, working through resistance calmly, attention during uncertainty, inner order as professional advantage. Because sustainable productivity is not about speed, it is about stability. Education beyond institutions. Learning as inner reorganization. Opening frame. When education fails its purpose. Education is supposed to clarify thinking, expand capacity, increase independence. Yet many educated people feel confused, dependent, unsure how to act. This is not a failure of intelligence. It is a failure of structure. Information is not education. Information accumulates. Education reorganizes. A mind filled with facts but lacking structure cannot act decisively. Learning without integration creates overload, not wisdom. Reflection pause. Invite the listener. How much do I know that I do not know how to use? Why institutions teach content, not capacity? Institutions are designed for scale. They reward memorization, compliance, standardization. But capacity requires reflection, experimentation, internalization. These cannot be mass-produced, so they are often ignored. The difference between learning and training. Training produces performance. Learning produces understanding. Performance fades without reinforcement. Understanding adapts. True education builds principles, not scripts. Why adults struggle to learn. Adult learning threatens identity. To learn is to admit gaps, errors, unfinished thinking. The ego resists this exposure. This is why many adults stop learning deeply and settle for surface knowledge. Reflection pause. Ego awareness. Ask quietly. What do I avoid learning because it might unsettle who I think I am? Learning requires psychological safety. A threatened mind cannot learn. Fear narrows perception. Shame blocks curiosity. Safety opens exploration. This is why self-directed learning often outperforms institutional pressure. Education as self-construction. Real education builds judgment, discernment, internal standards. It teaches you how to think, not what to repeat. This was central to the philosophy of Russell H. Conwell in Increasing Personal Efficiency. Efficiency begins when the mind becomes organized. Why curiosity dies in classrooms? Curiosity requires autonomy. Forced pacing kills interest. External evaluation replaces internal motivation. The question shifts from what do I want to understand to what do they want from me? Learning collapses. Reflection pause. Curiosity check. Invite the listener. When was the last time I learned something purely because I wanted to understand it? Education without application is entertainment. Knowledge without application becomes intellectual consumption. Consumption feels productive. It is not. Application transforms knowledge into capacity. The role of silence in learning. Learning needs space. Silence allows consolidation, questioning, integration. Constant input prevents digestion. A full mind cannot reorganize. The first law of true education. Learning is proven by what you can do differently, not by what you can recall. If nothing changes, education did not occur. Transition to segment 2. In the next segment, we will explore self-education as a discipline, learning without teachers, building internal standards of truth, the role of reading, reflection, and synthesis. Because education is not something given to you, it is something you build inside yourself.
Education beyond institutions, learning as inner reorganization. Self-education is not casual curiosity, it is disciplined exploration. Without discipline, interests scatter, knowledge fragments, momentum dissolves. Self-education requires clear questions, deliberate pace, consistent reflection. Freedom without structure collapses into noise. Learning without teachers. Teachers accelerate learning, but dependence on teachers weakens judgment. At some point, you must become your own guide. This requires evaluating sources, questioning assumptions, tolerating uncertainty. Independence replaces instruction. Reflection pause. Authority shift. Invite the listener. Whose understanding do I trust more than my own? What would change if responsibility returned to me? Building internal standards of truth. Institutions provide external validation. Self-education requires internal standards. You must ask, does this explain reality better? Does it improve my decisions? Does it hold under pressure? Truth becomes functional, not fashionable. Why reading alone is not learning. Reading exposes, learning integrates. Without reflection, insights evaporate, connections are missed. Reflection converts information into structure. Silence after reading is where learning occurs. The role of writing in understanding. Writing clarifies thought. If you cannot write it simply, you do not understand it. Writing reveals gaps that reading hides. This is why private writing is a powerful educational tool. Reflection pause. Integration check. Ask quietly, what have I read recently that I never processed? Synthesis over accumulation. Collecting ideas feels productive. Synthesizing them is transformative. Synthesis connects concepts, reveals patterns, builds worldview. Without synthesis, knowledge remains isolated. Learning in layers, not lines. Real learning is cyclical. You return to ideas, older, wiser, with context. Each return deepens understanding. Linear progression is an illusion. Depth comes from revisiting. Why confusion is a sign of growth. Confusion means reorganization is occurring. Old structures are dissolving. New ones are not yet formed. This discomfort is necessary. Avoiding confusion stalls learning. Reflection pause. Discomfort tolerance. Invite the listener. When confusion appears, do I escape or do I stay present? Education as capacity expansion. The goal of learning is not certainty. It is capacity to think, to adapt, to decide. Education that reduces fear increases intelligence. The second law of true education. Do not measure learning by how much you consume. Measure it by how much clearer you become. In the next segment, we will explore reading as dialogue, not intake, learning across disciplines, avoiding false expertise, and building a personal philosophy. Because education does not end with knowing, it begins when thinking changes shape.
Education beyond institutions. Learning as inner reorganization. Reading as dialogue, not intake. Most people read to absorb. Educated minds read to converse. They ask, do I agree? Where does this fail? What does this clarify? Reading becomes an interaction, not a download. This dialogue sharpens judgment. Why passive learning creates false confidence. Passive learning feels safe. It creates the illusion of confidence. But without testing ideas, confidence inflates, understanding weakens. True learning exposes ignorance. That exposure is productive. Reflection pause, engagement check. Invite the listener. When I read or listen, am I consuming or responding internally? Learning across disciplines. Reality is not divided by subjects. Problems are interdisciplinary. Learning across domains deepens insight, prevents rigidity, strengthens transfer. Connecting ideas builds intelligence. Isolated knowledge builds trivia. Avoiding the trap of false expertise. Information access creates premature certainty. Knowing terminology is not mastery. Mastery shows in judgment under pressure, simplicity of explanation, ability to act. Beware the comfort of sounding informed. The role of experience in education. Experience tests theory. Theory organizes experience. Without experience, ideas remain abstract. Without theory, experience remains chaotic. Education integrates both. Reflection pause, reality check. Ask quietly, what do I believe that I have never tested? Building a personal philosophy. A personal philosophy is a set of principles tested by life, refined by reflection. It guides decisions when rules are absent. Institutions cannot provide this. You must build it. Why contradiction is educational. Contradictions force thinking. They dissolve rigid frameworks. Avoiding contradiction preserves comfort. Engaging it builds depth. Conflicted ideas are invitations, not threats. Education as pattern recognition. Intelligence is not memory, it is pattern recognition. Seeing what repeats, what causes what matters. Patterns reduce complexity, they enable prediction. Reflection pause, pattern awareness. Invite the listener. What patterns do I notice across what I've learned? From knowledge to wisdom. Knowledge informs, wisdom selects. Wisdom knows what to ignore, when to wait, when to act. Education matures when restraint appears. This is the inner efficiency emphasized by R.H. Conwell in Increasing Personal Efficiency. The third law of true education. Do not aim to know more. Aim to need less to know. Clarity increases as unnecessary complexity falls away. Transition to final segment of Part 8. In the final segment, we will integrate education as lifelong self-renewal, teaching as proof of understanding, when to stop learning and act, knowledge in service of life. Because education is not preparation for life, it is life organizing itself.
Education beyond institutions. Learning as inner reorganization. Education as lifelong self-renewal. Education does not end, it cycles. Each stage of life demands new questions, revised assumptions, deeper integration. Learning renews relevance. Without renewal, knowledge fossilizes. Teaching as proof of understanding. You understand something when you can explain it clearly without defending it. Teaching reveals gaps, assumptions, real mastery. You don't need an audience.
Explaining to yourself counts. Reflection pause, understanding test. Invite the listener. What do I think I understand but have never tried to explain simply? When to stop learning and act. Endless learning can become avoidance. Action tests understanding. If learning does not change behavior, it has exceeded its usefulness. The question becomes, what is the smallest action that applies this? Knowledge in service of life. Knowledge is not decoration, it is orientation. Useful knowledge improves decisions, reduces suffering, increases agency. If knowledge complicates life without clarity, it has missed its purpose. Education without humility collapses. Learning requires humility. Certainty blocks revision. The educated mind stays adjustable. It knows, I may be wrong, and that's useful. Reflection pause, openness check. Ask quietly, where am I protecting certainty instead of pursuing clarity? The ethical dimension of education. What you learn shapes how you influence. Education carries responsibility. Understanding without integrity creates manipulation. This ethical grounding echoes the core of Russell H. Conwell's vision in Increasing Personal Efficiency. Efficiency serves character, not ego. Education as inner order extended. Education organizes thinking. Organized thinking organizes life. Choices simplify. Noise reduces. Action clarifies. Learning becomes a stabilizing force. The educated mind in uncertainty. The goal is not certainty, it is orientation. An educated mind asks better questions, adapts calmly, acts with proportion. This is resilience through understanding. Practical integration, the learning to life practice. For the next 30 days, learn one idea deeply, write a one-page synthesis, apply it in one small action, reflect on results. Notice, confidence becomes quieter, decisions become cleaner, curiosity stays alive. Closing passage, seal the insight. You do not need more information, you need better organization of meaning. You do not need permission to learn. You need courage to revise yourself. Because true education does not make you impressive, it makes you capable. Character, wealth, and meaning. When success stops being empty. Opening frame. Why wealth alone never satisfies. Many people chase wealth, believing it will settle something inside. But money does not organize the inner world. It amplifies what is already there. If character is fragmented, wealth magnifies the fragmentation. If character is ordered, wealth becomes a tool. Character is the infrastructure of success. Skills create opportunity. Character determines sustainability. Without character, success becomes volatile. Pressure exposes weakness. Gains leak through poor decisions. Character is not image. It is behavior under no supervision. Reflection pause. Invite the listener. Who am I becoming through the way I pursue success? Why many successful people feel hollow. Achievement satisfies goals. It does not satisfy meaning. Meaning comes from coherence, contribution, and alignment. Without these, success feels mechanical. Hollow success is success without integration. Wealth as a multiplier, not a cure. Money multiplies habits, values, and emotional patterns. It does not repair confusion. It accelerates it. This is why inner order must precede outer accumulation. The relationship between integrity and peace. Integrity reduces internal conflict. When actions align with values, decisions simplify, anxiety decreases, sleep improves. Peace is not passivity, it is inner agreement. Reflection pause. Alignment check. Ask quietly, where do my actions contradict what I claim to value? Why shortcuts corrode meaning? Shortcuts promise speed, they deliver erosion. Each compromised decision weakens self-trust, normalizes avoidance, lowers internal standards. Meaning requires durability. Durability requires patience. Character as long-term strategy. Character is inefficient short-term. It is unbeatable long-term. Trust compounds. Reputation stabilizes. Opportunities deepen. This long view echoes the core emphasis of Russell H. Conwell in Increasing Personal Efficiency. Efficiency serves life when guided by principle. Why meaning cannot be purchased. Meaning is constructed, not acquired. It emerges from responsibility accepted, effort sustained, values embodied. Buying comfort is easy. Earning meaning requires participation. Reflection pause. Responsibility awareness. Invite the listener. What responsibility am I avoiding that might actually organize my life? The silent cost of status chasing. Status requires comparison. Comparison creates restlessness. Restlessness erodes satisfaction. Meaning does not compare. It orients. When orientation exists, external rank loses urgency. Wealth in service of life. Healthy wealth expands choice, reduces fragility, enables contribution. Unhealthy wealth increases fear of loss, distorts priorities, isolates. The difference is character. The first law of meaningful success. Success without character creates noise. Character without success creates limitation. Meaning emerges when both mature together. Transition to segment 2. In the next segment, we will explore the moral psychology of money, why values collapse under pressure, building wealth without losing yourself, when enough is enough. Because the question is not, how much can I gain? It is, what kind of person will I become while gaining it? Character, wealth, and meaning, when success stops being empty. The moral psychology of money. Money is neutral, but decisions around money are not. Money introduces speed, leverage, and temptation. It shortens the distance between impulse and consequence. This is why character matters more when resources increase. Why values collapse under pressure. Most values are untested. Pressure tests them. Under stress, convenience competes with principle. Speed competes with integrity. Values that survive pressure become identity. Values that collapse were decoration. Reflection pause. Invite the listener. Which of my values have actually survived pressure? The difference between earning and extracting. Earning creates mutual benefit. Extracting creates imbalance. Extractive success depletes trust, damages systems, and isolates the individual. Earned success compounds. Extracted success decays. Why compromise feels small but accumulates. Compromises rarely arrive loudly. They arrive quietly. Just this once. Everyone does it. Each compromise lowers the internal standard. Lower standards invite further compromise. This erosion is gradual and dangerous. Wealth without self-regulation. Without self-regulation, spending escalates, risk increases, anxiety rises. More money without order creates fragility, not freedom. Regulation converts resources into stability. Reflection pause. Regulation check. Ask quietly, do my resources make my life calmer or noisier? Building wealth without losing yourself. Sustainable wealth respects health, relationships, sleep, and values. When wealth demands self-betrayal, the cost is hidden but real. Meaning requires continuity of self. Why enough is a psychological threshold. Without a concept of enough, desire expands endlessly. Satisfaction retreats. Enough is not a number. It is a relationship with desire. Defining enough restores peace. The quiet power of financial boundaries. Boundaries protect meaning. They say what you will not do, what you will not sacrifice. Boundaries reduce temptation. They simplify choice. Reflection pause. Boundary awareness. Invite the listener. What am I unwilling to trade for more money? Wealth as responsibility, not reward. Resources increase impact. Impact increases responsibility. This perspective stabilizes behavior. It aligns with the principle emphasized by Russell H. Conwell in Increasing Personal Efficiency. Efficiency serves life when guided by conscience. The second law of meaningful wealth. Money should reduce fear, not increase it. If wealth amplifies anxiety, it is misaligned. Transition to segment 3. In the next segment, we will explore success without inner corrosion, reputation as moral capital, long-term trust as wealth, the calm confidence of clean success. Because the real measure of wealth is not what it buys, but what it allows you to remain.
Character, wealth, and meaning. When success stops being empty. Success without inner corrosion. Some success eats the inside. It requires constant justification, defensive thinking, fear of exposure. Clean success does not demand explanation. It feels quiet, unrushed, stable. Reputation as moral capital. Reputation is not image. It is accumulated behavior. It forms when promises are kept, boundaries are respected, and decisions remain consistent. Reputation reduces friction. It opens doors silently. Reflection pause. Invite the listener. If people observed my actions quietly over time, what pattern would they see? Why trust is the highest form of wealth. Money solves problems temporarily. Trust solves them permanently. With trust, negotiations simplify, opportunities multiply, mistakes are forgiven. Trust compounds faster than money, but it requires restraint. The long-term advantage of being reliable. Reliability is underestimated. It lacks drama. But in complex systems, reliability becomes rare and valuable. People build futures around those they can depend on. The calm confidence of clean success.
When success is earned without self-betrayal, confidence becomes quiet, comparison fades, urgency dissolves. There is no need to prove, only to continue. Reflection pause, internal noise check. Ask quietly, does my ambition increase my peace or disturb it? Why ethical consistency reduces cognitive load. Contradictions exhaust the mind. Consistency simplifies thought. When values align with behavior, decisions take less energy, stress decreases, and clarity improves. This is efficiency at the deepest level. Wealth that strengthens relationships. Healthy wealth supports others, reduces dependence, enables generosity. Unhealthy wealth creates suspicion, introduces imbalance, and strains connection. Character determines which appears. The difference between power and influence. Power compels, influence attracts. Influence emerges from integrity, calm presence, and consistency. Influence lasts longer than authority. Reflection pause. Influence awareness. Invite the listener. How do people change after interacting with me? Meaning as internal coherence. Meaning is coherence over time. It is waking up aligned with yesterday's decisions. This coherence was central to the philosophy of Russell H. Conwell, who emphasized in Increasing Personal Efficiency that efficiency without character fractures the self. The third law of meaningful success. Do not chase admiration, build alignment. Admiration fades, alignment sustains. Transition to final segment of Part 9. In the final segment, we will integrate legacy beyond money, what remains when success ends, character as inheritance, and the quiet definition of a successful life. Because the final question is not, how high did I climb? It is, what did I become while climbing?
Character, wealth, and meaning. When success stops being empty. Legacy beyond money. Money disappears quickly. Legacy does not. What remains is how people felt around you, what you normalized, what you refused to compromise. Legacy is behavioral residue. When success ends. Every role ends. Every title expires. When success quiets, character remains. Those who invested only in status feel lost. Those who built inner order remain oriented. Reflection pause. Invite the listener. If all external success paused tomorrow, who would I still be? Character as inheritance. Children inherit patterns before they inherit money. Teams inherit culture before resources. Character travels silently across generations. This is the most durable form of wealth. The myth of the perfect life. No life is flawless. A meaningful life is not clean. It is honest. It acknowledges failure without surrendering direction. Meaning survives imperfection. The quiet definition of a successful life. A successful life reduces unnecessary harm, increases clarity, leaves systems better. It does not need applause, it needs coherence. Reflection pause, coherence check. Ask quietly. Do my days make sense when placed together? Wealth as a chapter, not the story. Money is a chapter. Character is the narrative.
Confusing the two creates distortion. When the story is clear, chapters find their place. The inner measure of enough. Enough is not withdrawal, it is orientation. It is knowing when to stop, when to continue, what matters now. Enough brings rest without stagnation. What remains after the noise? When ambition quiets, when competition fades, when comparison dissolves, what remains is how you treat yourself, how you treat others, how you face reality. This is the true audit. Closing integration, the final frame. You were never meant to be efficient machines. You were meant to become integrated humans. This was the deeper message behind the work of Russell H. Conwell, whose philosophy in increasing personal efficiency was not about doing more, but about becoming whole. Because in the end, success fades, character stays, meaning remains.
The integrated life, when everything finally works together. Opening frame, why integration is the final work. Most lives are fragmented, thinking in one direction, working in another, wanting something, living something else. Integration is not addition, it is alignment. Nothing new is added, nothing essential is removed. Everything begins to face the same direction. Fragmentation is the hidden source of exhaustion. Exhaustion is not always effort. Often it is internal contradiction, when values conflict with behavior, goals contradict health, ambition ignores meaning, energy leaks. Integration seals the leaks. Reflection pause. Invite the listener. Where in my life am I split instead of whole? The difference between balance and integration. Balance is external management. Integration is internal coherence. Balance asks, how do I divide my time? Integration asks, why am I doing any of this? When purpose is clear, balance adjusts naturally. A life that pulls in one direction. An integrated life simplifies decisions, reduces inner debate, removes constant justification. You stop negotiating with yourself. Action becomes quieter and stronger. Why complexity often hides avoidance. Complex systems can hide confusion. More strategies, more plans, more optimization. Integration prefers simplicity. Simplicity reveals what matters. Avoidance prefers noise. Reflection pause. Simplicity check. Ask quietly, what am I complicating that could be clarified instead? The integration of thought. Integrated thinking connects ideas, avoids extremes, tolerates nuance. You stop defending opinions and start examining reality. Thinking becomes adaptive, not rigid. The integration of action. Integrated action matches capacity, respects limits, compounds over time. No heroic bursts, no dramatic collapses, just steady direction. The integration of desire. Desire is not the enemy. Unexamined desire is. Integrated desire knows when to pause, knows when to pursue, knows when enough has arrived. Desire becomes a guide, not a tyrant. Reflection pause. Desire awareness. Invite the listener. Which desires in my life bring coherence and which create fragmentation?
the inner economy of energy. Energy is not infinite. Integrated lives spend energy wisely. They avoid unnecessary conflict, performative ambition, borrowed expectations. Energy goes to what matters. Living without constant self-correction. Fragmented lives require constant fixing. Integrated lives require maintenance, not repair. Small adjustments replace major overhauls. This creates calm confidence. The first law of the integrated life. Do not ask, how can I do more? Ask, what no longer belongs? Integration progresses through subtraction. Transition to segment 2. In the next segment, we will explore integrating work, money, and meaning, ambition without inner violence, simplicity as strength, living at the right speed. Because the integrated life is not impressive, it is sustainable.
The integrated life, when everything finally works together. Integrating work, money, and meaning. Most people separate these. Work for survival, money for security, meaning for later. Integration brings them together. Work becomes an expression of capability. Money becomes a stabilizer, not a driver. Meaning becomes the compass, not the reward. When meaning leads, work and money fall into place. Reflection pause. Invite the listener. What am I using money for that meaning should handle instead? Ambition without inner violence. Ambition is not the problem. Violent ambition is. Integrated ambition respects health, honors relationships, moves at a human pace. It does not demand self-erasure. It cooperates with reality. The right speed of life. Too fast creates mistakes. Too slow creates stagnation. The right speed is responsive, attentive, sustainable. Integrated lives move at the speed of clarity. Simplicity as strength. Simplicity is not lack, it is precision. When life simplifies, decisions shorten, anxiety drops, focus sharpens. Simplicity reveals what is essential. Reflection pause. Noise audit. Ask quietly, what noise am I mistaking for progress? The integration of responsibility. Responsibility grounds freedom. Without responsibility, freedom becomes chaos. Integrated responsibility is chosen, is proportional, and strengthens identity. You stop resenting responsibility when it matches your values. Living without constant comparison. Comparison fragments identity. Integration dissolves comparison. When direction is clear, others become references, not threats. Admiration replaces envy. You return to your own lane. Inner alignment and external calm. External calm reflects internal order. When alignment exists, reactions soften, patience increases, presence deepens. Life stops feeling adversarial. Reflection pause. Alignment scan. Invite the listener. Where does my life feel calm, and why? Integration is a daily practice. Integration is not achieved once, it is maintained. Small daily checks. Is this aligned? Does this belong? Is this necessary now? These questions prevent drift. The cost of returning to fragmentation. Once integrated, fragmentation feels loud. You notice unnecessary conflict, artificial urgency, empty ambition. This awareness protects direction. The second law of the integrated life.
Do not aim for intensity, aim for continuity. A life that continues cleanly outperforms one that burns brightly and collapses. Transition to segment 3. In the next segment, we will explore relationships in an integrated life, boundaries without hardness, presence as quiet leadership, and living without fragmentation in a fragmented world. Because integration does not isolate you from life, it allows you to meet it whole.
The integrated life, when everything finally works together. Relationships as mirrors of integration. Relationships reveal integration faster than solitude. You can feel centered alone and fragmented with others. Why? Because relationships expose impatience, avoidance, unspoken expectations. They test whether alignment is real. Reflection pause. Invite the listener. Who am I around others compared to who I am alone? Boundaries without hardness. Integrated boundaries are calm. They do not explain excessively. They do not apologize for existing. They simply state, this works, this doesn't. Soft tone, firm clarity. This reduces conflict. Presence as the new influence. Presence replaces persuasion. When you are integrated, you listen fully. You respond proportionally. You don't rush to fix. People feel regulated around you. This is quiet leadership. Why drama signals inner fragmentation. Drama requires internal conflict. When alignment exists, reactivity drops. Escalation loses appeal. Silence becomes available. Integrated lives prefer resolution over intensity. Reflection pause, emotional regulation check. Ask quietly, what situations still pull me out of my center? Communicating from wholeness. Fragmented communication defends. Integrated communication clarifies. It says what matters, what's needed, what's possible. No manipulation, no performance, just truth with timing. Living with fewer masks. Masks cost energy. Integration reduces the need to perform. You stop adjusting personality to earn acceptance. Consistency replaces strategy. Relief follows. Conflict without identity threat. In integrated lives, disagreement does not threaten self-worth. Feedback is information, not attack. This allows learning, repair, and mutual respect. Strength becomes quiet. Reflection pause. Identity stability. Invite the listener. What feedback am I resisting because it feels personal? Integration in a fragmented world. The world rewards urgency. Integration rewards clarity. You will feel slower than noise, calmer than chaos, less reactive. This is not weakness. It is insulation. Being a regulating presence. Integrated individuals stabilize rooms. They lower emotional temperature, slow conversations, bring proportion. Others may not know why, but they feel safer. The third law of the integrated life. Do not try to change others. Become coherent. Coherence influences quietly. In the final segment of Part 10, we will close the entire journey with integration over a lifetime, when growth becomes maintenance, the end of self-improvement, living without inner opposition. Because the integrated life is not about becoming more, it is about no longer being divided.
The integrated life, when everything finally works together. Integration across a lifetime.
Integration is not a phase. It is a way of living. At each stage of life, priorities shift, capacities change, questions evolve. Integration adapts without fragmenting. When growth becomes maintenance. Early life requires growth. Later life requires care. Care for health, for relationships, for attention, for meaning. Maintenance is not stagnation. It is respect for what works. Reflection pause. Invite the listener. What in my life no longer needs improvement, only protection? The end of self-improvement. Self-improvement assumes something is broken. Integration assumes something is misaligned. You stop fixing yourself. You start listening. Correction becomes gentler. Living without inner opposition. The integrated life ends inner war. You no longer argue with yourself, force motivation, punish inconsistency. You negotiate honestly. Energy returns. The quiet maturity of clarity. Clarity removes urgency. You stop rushing to arrive. You know where you are going. Time becomes an ally. Reflection pause. Time relationship. Ask quietly. Do I treat time as an enemy or a partner? When nothing needs proving. The need to prove signals fragmentation. Integration brings rest. You allow results to speak slowly. Presence replaces performance. Success as inner stability. Success is no longer accumulation, recognition, speed. It becomes steadiness, coherence, continuity. This is success that survives change. The final integration. When thought, action, desire, and values align, life simplifies. Not because it is smaller, but because it is true. Closing passage. The last frame. You were never meant to optimize endlessly. You were meant to live coherently. This journey, from efficiency to discipline to character to meaning to integration, was never about doing more. It was about becoming undivided. And in that silence, life works. End of the audiobook series. Theme: wholeness over improvement. Tone: peace, clarity, completion.